Mr. Da Vinci, I'd like to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to interview you today.
Well, Miss Nunez, it is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here with you today.
I know everyone is very interested in hearing about your life, so let's get started. Can you tell me about where and when you were born?
Well, I was born in Vinci, Italy, in 1452. My parents were not married, and between them I had 17 half-sisters and brothers.
How did you get interested in becoming an artist?
Well, I lived with my father, who was an artist. Growing up, I was surrounded by the works and texts of scholars. I apprenticed to the workshop of an artist, Andrea de Verrocchio of Florence, at the age of 15.
After your apprenticeship, what kind of work did you do?
In 1477, I believe it was, I set up shop for myself. In 1482, the Duke of Milan commissioned my work. I stayed in Milan for about 17 years. This is where I really excelled in my works. I was painting, sculpting, designing weapons, building, and machinery. I did many studies of nature, geometry, mechanics, and architecture. I also produced some of my first anatomical studies.
Wow, that sounds like you really have a lot of different interests there.
Yes, it is, and unfortunately, that is the one reason I left so many pieces unfinished. I would be working on a project and then be compelled to start something new. In those 17 years, I really only completed 6 works, including The Last Supper and Madonna of the Rocks.
What did you do after your work for the Duke?
Oh, the Duke. Well, I worked and traveled throughout Italy for many different employers, and even traveled with the army for a year, serving as a military engineer. In 1503, I started work on the Mona Lisa, and from 1513 through 1516 or so, I worked in Rome and undertook many projects for the Pope himself.
I understand the last few years of your life were spent in France. How did you end up there?
Well, I moved there because I was hired by King Francis I as premier painter and engineer and architect to the king. He was perhaps my most generous patron. I had a cushy job, a generous salary, and a manor house in which to live.
How did suffering from paralysis of your right hand affect your work?
Even though being left-handed was looked down upon in my time, luckily I was left-handed. I was able to continue drawing and teaching. During those years, I did many studies of the Virgin Mary and finished The Virgin and Child with St. Anne. I worked on studies of animals, machine, and nature. I continued my detailed studies of anatomy.
How's your relationship with King Francis?
King Francis was my very close friend and companion until my death in 1519. He was even at my side when I died.
Mr. Da Vinci, thank you so much for your time today. It was very informative and insightful.
Well, Miss Nunez, it was indeed my great pleasure to be here with you today.